Hello and welcome, all my dear viewers, all my dear students. I think all of you are fine with sound health. Today's topic is Latin influence, and that is why I request all of you to have a piece of paper and a pen for the sake of taking down the important words or notes. So I'm just starting Latin influence. So the first thing that comes inside our mind, the term itself, that is Latin. What does it mean? Latin means the language of ancient Rome and its empire. English is considered to be a Germanic language because its core vocabulary and grammar were derived from Proto-Germanic language. A significant portion of English vocabulary that came from Latin or Latinate sources. From that perspective, we can say that Latin has not only inflated the vocabulary of the English, but it also changed the style and syntax of English language. So it can be said that Latin influence on English language is perhaps the most important of all the influences, and it has enriched English tongue in a considerable degree. Understood? There were three distinct phases, three distinct parts or sections or layers or strata, okay, of Latin loans, and one after another I shall discuss this. So first, the first stratum of Latin loans or the first phase of Latin loans. The forefathers of the English who derived some of the Latin words, these are camp, mile, flask, poppy, plum, pitch, street, cook, kitchen, meal, etc. Many words were taken from the Celts. One such example is port, which was actually taken from Latin porters. There are some other examples like Celtic siestra from Latin castra or camp, and this has produced such place names as Dorchester, Lancaster, Orchester. It is interesting to know that before the English or English people were connected to Christianity, they had few Latin Christian words in their vocabulary. Thus, they had church, angel, devil, minister, bishop, monk, priest, etc. So this was actually the first phase of Latin influence. Now the second phase or second stratum of Latin loans. With the introduction of Christianity in England towards the end of 6th century, a large number of Latin words entered into the English vocabulary. Some of the words abbot, nun, monk, pope, archbishop, priest, etc. Other words relating to church and Christian religion that also entered, and I'm also just mentioning the words like altar, anthem, martyr, mass, rule, etc. So names of objects that also entered into English vocabulary. These are cap, chest, of vegetables like pea, radish, of trees and plants like pine and lily. All these entered inside English vocabulary. Some of the dignified words like school, master, verse, meter, gloss, all these words that also came from the Latin source. Apart from this, some miscellaneous words like fever, circle, giant, talent, consult, phoenix. These words also came from the Latin source and heavily used. Now, third stratum of Latin loans or third phase of Latin loans. Throughout the Middle English period, the borrowing of Latin loans that was continuing, and various types of words related to religion, medicine, law, alchemy, these types of words that entered into English vocabulary. I am just mentioning some of the words like law terms, which is legal, prosecute, custody, scientific terms like zenith, index, ecclesiastical terms like incarnate, pulpit, rosary, scripture, medical terms like lunatic, ulcer, literary terms, allegory, ornate, simile, these words. Now I'm just mentioning about the Renaissance. We know that Renaissance that came in the middle of 15th century after the fall of Constantinople. This Renaissance that revived the interest of all Europe in Greek and in Latin languages. Now I am mentioning some of the Latin words and modern English form. Latin debitum, modern English debt. Latin dubitior, modern English doubt. Latin perfectus, in modern English perfect. Latin verdictum, in modern English verdict. Latin adventum, modern English adventure. We have to remember that most of the classical words borrowed in the post-Renaissance period were learned words. I am just mentioning them. 16th century borrowing, area, circus, exit, genius, thereafter medium. 17th century borrowing, arena, apparatus, focus, lens, thereafter complex, status, specimen. 18th century borrowing, bonus, deficit, extra, nucleus, etc. 19th century borrowing, that is ego, opus, referendum, etc. Latin influence on English grammar. We have to remember that Latin supplied many adjectives. Now I am just mentioning some of them. English nouns, Latin adjectives. English noun mouth, Latin adjective oral. English noun nose, Latin adjective nasal. English noun eye, Latin adjective ocular. English noun sun, Latin adjective filial. English noun moon, Latin adjective lunar. English noun sun, Latin adjective solar. English noun home, Latin adjective domestic. English noun mind, Latin adjective mental. So from that perspective it can be said that Latin has supplied a number of adjectives as well as fulfilled the scarcity of English adjectives. Another thing that I would like to tell, which is related to relative pronoun. Relative pronoun that which is much more older than who and which. But who and which, these two relative pronouns are connected to Latin relative pronouns. And that is why who and which are affluently used, while as the usage of this particular relative pronoun which is not so circulated. So thank you very much all my dear students and viewers.